Hello. We're back with another builds video. So in this video, I got a comment asking whether you should build Rocketbelt or Night Harvester on a lot of AP champions. So I wanted to take that on. And so the builds that we're comparing in this video are going to be, the first item is just going to be the myth, right? Like Night Harvester or Protobelt. Also, quick aside, whenever I say Protobelt, I mean Rocketbelt. I still haven't really adapted to the new items and I still call it Protobelt. So sorry, and I hope that's not too confusing. But I also found that there wasn't really enough difference to be super meaningful or interesting to me when I was doing it. So I also added a second item. And so the way I did this is the champion I'm going to be using to compare things is Diana. And so I went on low analytics and just found what were her two most bought second items, and they were Zonia's and Nashor's Tooth. And I just picked those because I don't know, why not? Seemed interesting. And so the builds that we're actually going to be comparing are Nashor's or Night Harvester and Protobelt, and then them both with Sork shoes just to give more magic pen, just to make it a little bit more interesting. And then we're going to be going over both of these builds, but also adding Zonia's or Nashor's too. So we have Night Harvester, Sork shoes, Zonia's, Night Harvester, Sork shoes, Nashor's Tooth, Protobelt, Sork shoes, Zonia's, Protobelt, Sork shoes, Nashor's Tooth. And so these are the different values for all of the builds. Again, this will be kind of covered and doesn't really matter too much like it normally doesn't. But like quick aside, like Nashor's Tooth will always have more AP. Zonia's will have a little bit more haste. The HP doesn't matter too much. When you buy Zonia's, they have 45 more armor. Cool. But one thing that I did find interesting that I wanted to look at is so Night Harvester and Rocketbelt both have damaging actives. Night Harvester's really isn't an active, it's just the first time you hit a champion for 40 seconds, I think. It just does more damage. But it's interesting because Night Harvester and Protobelt actually have the same base damage and ratio. And what I didn't know until literally this video is that additional shots on Rocketbelt don't do additional damage. I swear that they did on Rocketbelt, but or I swear they did on Protobelt, but now they don't on Rocketbelt, so that's interesting. And then Nashor's Tooth on hit has 15 base damage, but 20% AP ratio. So its performance efficiency is like crazy high because the base is low, ratio is high. So the more AP you get, the more the damage increases by a lot. And so let's look at abilities first item. And so the way we're comparing this, I just touched on it a second ago, but is mostly by performance efficiency. What I mean by performance efficiency is it's a stat that measures how much the damage of your champion scales with this specific stat. So right now we're looking at the performance efficiency for AP. And basically, a 20% performance efficiency means that for every 100 AP that you buy, your total base damages increase by 20%. So, like, say you did 500 damage before you bought 100 AP, now you'll do 600. And, like, for example, if you had 100% performance efficiency, you'd go from 500 to 1,000. And so this is a stat that really lets you look at the total ratios of a champion and sees how well they scale with any particular stat. Today it's AP. And so for all of these videos, they actually all have the same APs, so they're all the same for all of these builds. And so the interesting thing here, though, to look at is just the difference in the magic pen of Protobelt and uh, Night Harvester, whether or not they have Sork. So Protobelt does say 5% to like 2% more damage than Night Harvester here if you don't have Sork, and like 5.5% down to like around 2% again if you do have Sorks, just because that magic pen does give you some additional strength even against the tank. But yeah, this is why I wanted to look at like more items because honestly, that's boring. But yeah, so at two items, this is where it gets a little bit more interesting. And the way I looked at this again is by performance efficiency, but we're doing it by we're splitting it by mythic and then like by item that you buy after. So we have the two Protobelt rushes into Zonia's and into Nashor's Tooth. Also, hello Kitty. Cat's gonna say hi to the camera. But yeah, so basically the way this you can read this is that when you have Nashor's Tooth, you're getting 13, like 5% to 13% more damage, depending on your performance efficiency, which makes sense because the better you use AP, the more the difference in AP between these builds matters, if that makes sense. Because Zhonya's is less AP in the build because you lose like 45 AP between like crossing over and buying the different items. And so for both of these, it's the same because again, Protobelt and Night Harvester both have the same AP value, so these are going to be identical. And then here, the interesting part about the Magic Pen is that Protobelt now has the Mythic passive that it gets more Magic Pen the more legendary items that you have. So it's starting to scale a little bit. So like, if you have literally no bonus MR and you have like 30 MR, okay, bye cat, you're doing around 11% more damage than the Night Harvester builds. And if they have like 200, you're doing about 4% more damage. And so again, like the Protobelt build will always do a little bit more damage before you get into all of the nitty gritty details. There is the argument that in Protobelt, you won't always get the active off, whereas with Night Harvester, you will every time you're fighting a new champion. And we'll go into that in a minute. But right now, let's look at an example of Diana. So Diana at level 9, I basically just went through and calculated her performance efficiencies. So these are the base damage for her different abilities. These are the ratios. And so basically the quick way to get performance efficiency is just like, what is her new damage after you add 100 AP divided by the old damage minus 1? And that just gives you the performance efficiencies of each of these things. Yeah, so our passive is like 47. For E, because you haven't put any points in it yet, is still really high. It's at 100%, but that really doesn't matter, as you see when we go into the combo. Honestly, these combos don't really make much sense. When I was looking at this when I was about to start recording this video, I was like, how would you get 2 Qs, 3 Es, and only 1 passive proc? And I was like, I don't, just ignore it, it's fine. And so these are the base damages and ratios of these particular combos. And they all come out to have like a total performance efficiency of like 40 to 45%. So that's like, if you want to do like quick math, you could just use like 45% as the performance efficiency for AP for Diana. And you could use that for like quick math in game or like just kind of like head theory crafting. But the ones at level 13 are a little bit more interesting. In this part, I also included Nashers. So there's an argument that the way I included Nashers is not correct, and I could definitely understand that, and let me know if you guys agree. But the way I did it is I took the base damage of a passive and then just added 3 procs of Nashers to that passive damage and just put it in there. The reason I did that is that Diana's passive takes 3 autos to proc, so it's reasonable-ish to assume that like for every passive proc, you'll get 3 Nashers autos as well. This isn't totally right because a lot of the time when you're playing Diana, you'll like stack your passive up on minions, then dive in. So your first auto will be a passive auto rather than your third. But this is close enough, and it won't change the math like too far. And so on this one, I also went through and did the different combos just to get a performance efficiency for her right now. And I also did it with Nashers as well. So with Nashers, she has a significantly higher one because the performance efficiency of Nashers is actually crazy high. But without it, it's like 30 to 35%, and with it, it's like 35 to 40%. So I just like quick TLDR'd it like 30 to 40%, which when you look here gives about a 7% amp when you're looking at Zhonya's versus Nashor's tooth. And then the Protobelt pen amp, I just looked at whether like total MR again. So I was like, okay, so at this point in the game, like most squishies have maybe like 50 MR, and then we'll care up to about 200. So we can consider it like between 9 and 4% amp that you'll get from Protobelt pen over the Night Harvester pen, which doesn't have any. And so I did like a quick damage check where I used one of these combos and just looked at it like, okay, how much damage does this do pre-resist? How much damage does this do post-resist? And God, it does around 126% more damage when you actually have like the best possible case versus the worst possible case. Basically, like Protobelt Nashers or Rocketbelt Nashers has the highest AP item in Nashers as the second item, and also has the higher damage first item in Protobelt. And then Night Harvester is the lower damage, and Zonius is also the lower damage. So highest case versus lowest case, there's only a 26% difference, which matters a lot though, because that's 400 base damage against or that's 400 damage against a 50 armor target. This will almost certainly one-shot every ADC. This might not, so it can matter to hit that threshold. And so basically, like, summing at that point, Protobelt will always do more damage, but the other builds do have meaning. Like Zonia's, you get the Zonia's active, you get more armor. Night Harvester, you also don't get the Pen mythic passive, but you get the ability haste mythic passive, which can be meaningful as you're going throughout the game. But as we're going here, I wanted to look at what happens if you don't press the active on Rocketbelt, because for the last examples, I did press the active on both of them, but the quick TLDR is that the actual ability damage they do matters a lot more, because everything when we're looking at like over here with like performance efficiency, this is all independent of actual ability damage. It doesn't really care. This is all just percentages. But when you're removing flat damage out of your combo, you have to look a little bit more in depth at like how much damage do you actually do. So in this one, I looked at just Protobelt Nashers versus Night Harvester Nashers. And I just wanted to compare like what happens if you don't press the active on Rocketbelt. And I found that Protobelt will do more damage up until about 85 MR in this specific case. And so like without the active. After that, it needs the active to remain parity / do more damage than Night Harvester. I would also like to point out here that this whole analysis is not including runes. Runes, in this case, won't typically change the direction of relationships. Like, Protobelt will always do more damage when they're at lower MR, for example. But it might change the specific value. Like, if you have Electrocute, then this break-even point might not be 85 MR. It might be 80 MR, or 90, or like, it'll shift a little bit, most likely. But the direction of the relationship in that Protobelt does more damage to lesser MR targets will always be true. And so TLDR of everything that I just kind of word vomited, because I'm realizing that this was a lot of word vomit. I apologize. But Rocketbelt will always do more damage as long as you hit the active, and it won't really match up at one item if you don't. But as you get into 2 item, Rocketbelt will do more damage always as long as you hit the active every fight against every target. But if you don't hit the active, you should still outmatch Night Harvester versus Squishies, whether you get Zonias or whether you get Nashers. And so I put the idea that like you can do it around 70 MR to be safe, because I doubt it would skew that far with runes. So yeah, like if you think you're going to hit like a less than 70 MR target, you're probably doing more damage with Rocketbelt than you are with Night Harvester, even if you don't press the active on Protobelt, which I found really interesting that it skewed that hard. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you liked it, let me know. Also, how did you guys feel about this like off-colored background? Because I liked it better than just having white glaring stare out at me, but let me know. Hope you guys have a great night. Bye-bye.